Welcome to Peak Stitching here in Estes Park. I'm Debbie and Lester's on camera. Today I'm going to show you how to put your binding on your quilt. My method, there's 9 million methods out there, but this is the way I like to do it. But before I get started, I want to show you some new fabric that we got in yesterday. This is Under the Moon. It's just gorgeous. I just love the wolves. And to go with it, we got 2 coordinating fabrics. We've got an Aspen Under the Moon. Sorry, Lesta. Oh, she almost talked, guys. She almost said something. And this is Pine Shrubs. And I will put all the names up after this video, so you guys can find them if you're interested. And I want to remind you that Saturday, November 15th, Catherine will be teaching a pillowcase class. I didn't think that would be hard to say. And then on November 8th, I'm going to be teaching the Gear Up for the Holidays, and I am going to be using the dinner party pattern. And I'm going to be putting a binding on those today. So I'm not going to do any actual sewing. I'm just going to show you the steps to do it. And this is kind of the second part. I'm doing this a little backwards because I actually need to get the binding on these. And I will go back and show you how to prepare your binding before you attach it to the quilts. So to start with, you've got your prepared binding. You've sewn it together. Notice that mine is not folded in half. And then I'm going to take my placemat, but I'm going to sew to the back side because I flip to the front at the end and machine sew it down. If you want to hand sew it down, you would start on the front to sew your binding on. So I'm going to start up here at the top, and I like to use, if I'm doing a quilt, and even with the placemat, I'm going to start at the top so that my join seam is at the top instead of the bottom. It's going to show a little bit less, and also you're going to have more wear on the bottom part of your quilt than most usually on your top. So let's start over here, flip it over. So I got to make sure I know where my seam is. I know it's a little bit hard because of these colors. There's my seam right there. The reason why I got to make sure where it is because I want to make sure while I'm folding this. So I'm folding it over. Actually, I'm going to start at the other end because, as you can see, I have a seam right here. I really don't want to start off and have my seams match into another seam. So let me look again. Here we go. This one's far enough away. Probably put it on the corner. There we go. So I need to leave enough space here for it to be open to come back to it. I'm going to start here. You see how I'm just folding that over? You don't want to stretch it. You want to keep it folded straight. And then I like to put a clip right here. And then when I start with the machine, I'm going to start stitching right here. Right in here. And what I do is I figure out enough of my stitch so that when I fold it over onto the front, and it depends on what size you prepare your binding, you want to make sure that you don't see that seam up here after you sew it down. So I always double check it if I'm changing the size I want to do by just a hand sew or hand fold over to see where it's going to end. So you get started, and you do want to back stitch right here when you're first starting, because you want it to stay in place. So I've started here and I'm working my way around. Now I want to show you how to do your corners. Oh, this is going to be really hard to see. So when you're stitching up, I am the same distance here to here that I'm going to stop from here to here. And I back stitch right here. So as I'm coming in, I may back stitch, and if I am like back stitching one stitch before I should, I'm okay. Then you just go ahead and do your other one stitch. but you want that extra security in there. If you go past it, your corners will not fold back. So make sure you do not go past the distance from here, your stitch, to your edge. From here to here needs to be the same as here to here. And I can't give you the measurements because everybody does it different in different sizes. But again, that's where you're going to figure out when you fold it, when you stitch here, whatever you fold over here to make sure it doesn't show. So I did this. So I stopped here and I back stitched. And I'm just folding this with my fingers. I'm just going to flip it up for a 90-degree angle there. Okay, see how I have a 90-degree angle right here? Right here is straight. You want this to be straight, and you want a 90-degree angle right here. And I just use my fingernail, and I hold it down right there on the edge of the placemat. And you want to make sure that your corner here is nice and square with your quilt. You hold that there. Then you're going to start right here, and you're going to stitch and you're going to back stitch to get started right here, and then you're just going to come on down. So this is how you really can't see how I stitched and back stitched and then came back down. Okay, so now you've done all 4 of your corners, and you're coming up to how you're going to join them together. So I've got a tail. I hope I told you at the beginning to leave a long enough tail to come across to where you have, I like to use about the distance of my thumb to my pinky tips, tip to tip, without stretching them out too much. The reason being is because you have to gather up your quilt. Very easy on placemats to gather it up, but the bigger the quilt, the harder it is to gather it. So you want to leave enough space that you can work with your pieces here. So you're going to do, so what I do is I've got, it doesn't match, I should have done a different binding altogether in a different color, but point to point here, I just take my 2.5-inch ruler, line it up here on top, basic, you know, just an eyeing it to halfway in between these two. And then I take my right side, I fold it over, I use my fingernail, and I fold it back, and I want to make sure that I keep it lined up here. And I do this while I'm sitting at the machine, so I don't get up for the cutting table on this one here. Okay, and I got that lined up. I take a pair of good scissors right here, clip it. So that's that one. Then I take my ruler and I set it on top of this. You know what, I'm going to trim this a little bit more. It's a little crooked, and I actually do really have to finish these today. Go. Now it's straight. Okay. So I'm going to put my ruler back on top. I'm using my lines right here to make sure I keep that straight. Then I'm going to take my left side piece, make sure it's folded, don't stretch it, and I'm going to put my fingernail again right here, fold it over, make sure it's lined up here, and I had a little crease right there that I just pulled out. I just use my scissors again, flip it. So the rule is, when I say 2.5-inch rule, I should have explained. My binding is 2.5 inches wide. Whatever size your binding is how big of overlap you want on these two pieces right here. Okay, so now I'm going to sew it diagonally. My left one, I'm opening it with the right side facing up. My right hand, I opened it again with the right side facing up. I'm going to connect them right here, point to point up here. This is where I said that you want to make sure you had enough open space down here. So I crunch that up. And now I'm going to use pins. Those things I hardly ever use. So right now I'm just trying to get these corners right here lined up. Now watch how I pin this. I don't just go in and pin it once. I like to pin it twice. And you have to leave enough room for your walking foot because you have your walking foot on your machine right now as you're sewing down your binding. Make sure everything is straight up here at the top. So I went in once, came out, and I went back in. That allows it to be a little more stable so it doesn't twist as much on you when you're holding it in place there. Okay, so at this point down here, I want to make sure that this little point here, right in here, this point here lined up, scrunch this thing together so it's not pulling so much. Get that binding to open. There, make sure it's still flat. And on this one here, I'm going to double pin again. In, out, in, out. So notice I left enough space between the two pins for the walking foot to go through. Now you need to stitch from this point up here down to this point right here, and you might need to use a marker. I like to use the Sew Straight, and I didn't bring that over here to show you, but when I'm showing you how to prepare your binding, I'll show you how the Sew Straight works. Okay, I'm going to actually use a pin right here like I sewed it. Okay, so I may have to get 2 pins to do this. Take that one out. We're sewing. This is the machine stitching. Oops. I had a little snag there. Okay, not straight. There we go. If it'll stay down. I think we're still good. Okay, so I'm going to take so I've sewn it. Now the first thing you want to check is make sure that when you open it up, it will fold out the correct way. Unfortunately, I have these pins in here right now, so I can't show you. I didn't think about this. I should have thought ahead. That it should lay down flat and make sure that everything is facing the right way. If you twisted it the wrong way, is somebody calling? If you twist it the wrong way, you'll know at this point. And then I take and I would clip this across here, 1/4 of an inch away from my stitch, open my seam up, and continue stitching it down. After you get done with that part, after it's all stitched down, I go around, and this is why I do it on the top. I don't know if Lester can show you, but this, I top stitch it. So I just stitch right along the edge right there to hold it down. Yes, the back may not be perfect. As you can see, there's that straight stitch right there, but I'm okay with that if I'm using the same thread I used for my quilting. It just looks like part of the quilting. So when you're coming around to the corner, you're coming up, and you've got a fold back here. So you want to go opposite of that fold because the bulk is on this side right now. You want to put the top bulk on this side. So you're going to fold this side up. Now you're coming down this way, but you want to go ahead and come down to this corner here. Use a clip right down here. Push this in to your point here. And then you just want to fold this over. And see how you get a nice point right there? I'm going to back that off a little bit there. And you put another clip in it right here to hold it until you come up as you're sewing. And I just use my fingers except for the corners. And hold it over. And you don't want to pull too much because if you pull too much, you're going to end up like this versus this. And it's hard to maintain it. And you want to feel, you're right up against the edge right here. And I would just continue stitching down. I would stitch down to here. I would have my needle down and make sure I stitched right there, right in that groove right there. So I pass that fold right there, and I would turn my around with the needle down, and then I would just continue stitching. And that's how I sew my bindings on. And I still don't like doing bindings. Don't know what to say, but it's not hard. It goes really fast for me. And stay tuned because in the next week or two I will show you how to prepare, or how I prepare my binding. I need to be very careful about how I say that because there's so many different techniques out there, but this is the easiest one I found that works best for me and my brain. Have a great day, and I'll see you soon. Oh, I want to let you know that I'll post these, and this is going to be available on YouTube next week. Have a great one.